Albo's 5% deposit. Are you advising your customers to take this 5%?
Well, I don't advise them to take the 5%.
We bring an interesting point. So, yes, we know the unit market in Melbourne and Sydney from 16 to 2024 pretty much did nothing. And if we have a similar occurrence now and you've done your 5% deposit, that could be a real issue for someone 5 or 10 years down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can be an issue where, there will be potentially negative equity as well. And that's why it's really important that when you're buying a home, I think you also do need to look at the value proposition of that property moving forward.
If you're a single parent, you can do it at 2% deposit too. So that's a very interesting scenario too.
That's a very interesting scenario.
What would you give your advice for first home buyers?
Do your homework, seek advice and get educated.
We've got 3 properties to put up again. You're going to tell us if they're a good deal or bad deal?
So what is that? Is that a chicken?
I think that's a marker.
Oh,
a headlamp.
Sorry.
Or is it a barbecue?
I don't know.
Morning, Lloyd. Back in the studio again. Interesting one today. It seems to be happening out there in the market. Albo's 5% deposits. So I thought we'd cover this.
I think so. I think there's definitely a lot happening there. Talking about the numbers there, and also talking about how that is actually affecting the property markets all around the country. It's a really big thing at the moment.
Yeah,
and
buzz going on about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So have you got any thoughts on this first off before we start? Can you explain a little bit to our listeners what it actually is when they're putting down 5% deposit and the government's guaranteeing the other 15%? Just explain a little bit, first of all, what that's about.
Well, normally people need to put down a 20% deposit. Often they put down 10%, but they've got to pay lender's mortgage insurance, which covers the lender, really, not the buyer. But generally, people put down a 20% deposit and borrow the 80%.
Right.
What this is, this scheme means that the buyers can put down a 5% deposit, and the government will guarantee the other 15% of the deposit. And then we've just, the buyers still have to obviously take out a mortgage and everything like that, but they can get into a property with less deposit. But it is for homeowners, so It's not for investors, but we'll talk a little bit about that and how that works a little bit later, but it is for people who need to live in the property.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on it, but who is eligible for this? You said homeowners. Is anyone else that's eligible as well?
Well, it's essentially for homeowners,
right.
So it's not for investors, and it's also for first home buyers. So what that essentially means is that if you've bought, and this is where sometimes we get a question because someone's maybe bought an investment property before, but now they want to buy a home to live in. They think they're a first home buyer, but they're not actually a first home buyer because they've already bought a property.
Right.
So
they're excluded from the scheme. So if you've had investment property and you've been renting, and now you want to buy your own home, they're excluded.
Yes, so it is for first home buyers. It is the first time you bought a property, then you're eligible for the 5% scheme. Now that was it's been around for a while, and then they've extended it, and we'll run through the numbers and what that means.
Yeah.
But it was going to come in on the 1st of January, but they actually brought that forward to the 1st of October.
Right.
This year. So, but they've extended the numbers, which does, I guess, when it comes down to who's eligible for it, there's some of the numbers that you can run through us with because it does encapsulate more buyers now than what it used to.
Yeah, just let's recap on some of those numbers. So I got them printed out from the government's website. So if we look at it state by state, so now New South Wales is 1.5 million, right? Victoria is 950. Queensland's 1 million. So Queensland's actually got 50,000 more than Victoria, which I find interesting. South Australia, 900. Tasmania, 700,000. ACT, 1 million. Northern Territory, 600,000, but you're not buying in there because you already say that. Jervis Bay Territory, Norfolk Island, 550. Christmas Island, Coco Islands, 400,000. So there's a big broad. I'd love to know who worked these figures out.
Yeah, well, we'll have to go suss that out with the government, absolutely. But there is a fairly broad spectrum there. But that's the essentially the value of the properties you can buy up to, which does mean that, like, if you're looking at $1.5 million property in Sydney, it does give a larger scope to the type of property you can buy to previously when it had a much lower threshold.
Yeah, and people might be forgetting, they're still going to pay stamp duty. When you're buying 1.5 million, it's not just 5% deposit. I've had people come to me thinking, oh, great, it's I can do 5% deposit on 1.5 million. That's all I need to have. I said, no, you still got to pay stamp duty. And stamp duty at 1.5 million, even as a first home buyer, is $64,000.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's still got to be calculated as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the scheme sounds good,
It
but
does.
you still got to take out the loan.
Yeah.
You still got to be able to service the loan. So you still need to have the income to be able to do that.
Right.
I think one of the things is that people do generally find it hard, and saving deposit for your first home, that first deposit can be tricky. So that's how this scheme is meant to be able to benefit you. But you still need to be able to service the loan. You need to be able to pay for stamp duty, as you said, and then the extras as well. Legals and building and pest reports, strata reports, anything else that you need. Other fees and stuff in the property as well. So you still need to have essentially more than just that 5% deposit, and that's where people can potentially make a mistake. Is they think, oh well, I've got 5%. I'm looking at buying $1 million property and I've got $50,000.
I can do it.
But they actually need more than that. So they really do need to really look at that, and they need to probably get some suitable advice from people to make sure that they understand whether they can afford to buy a certain property or not.
So I ran some of those numbers to give our listeners a bit of an idea. So if you bought a property for 1.5 million, use your 5% deposit, 75,000, leaves you with a loan of 1.425. I worked it out on a interest rate of 5.2%, which is pretty close to what's out there. You've got $64,000 in stamp duty to pay, even with taking in the concessions, because there's none. So you need $145,000 stamp duty, legal fees in total to buy this property. But then you've got to service the loan. Right? And I think people forget this part. They think, oh, I've got a property. So you've got to have, this is just the repayment. So the repayment on that is $7,830 a month. Right? Annual payment, $93,000 a year. That's before you buy anything else.
Yeah.
And then the bank are going to look at you, aren't they, and go, okay, well, you can't just earn $100,000 a year. So if it's a single person, your annual income needs to be somewhere between $340,000 and $380,000. If that's for a single person. A couple, $170,000, $190,000 each makes it easier. Also, we should mention in this, if you're a single parent, you can do it at 2% deposit too. So that's a very interesting scenario too.
That's a very interesting scenario.
Yeah.
Because when you're a single parent, then there's a whole heap of other costs potentially involved as well. I mean, you might have some child support and things, but depending on your situation, it might even be harder for you to buy a property as a single parent. And then, so having just a 2% deposit may not necessarily be helping you out because you've got so many other expenses, particularly with your kids and things
whatever
like
else.
that.
And if you're not earning $380,000 a year.
But I just don't think none of this is particularly helpful. I know
that was my next question. Yeah,
it's heading in the right direction. I know the government's supposedly trying to help and get more people into homes and things like that. But I don't know whether it's going to have that effect. I think it's just going to make things more out of reach for people. To be honest, because. Look, what we've already seen from the, since the 1st of October or even leading up to the 1st of October is that the markets have started to take off because everybody is talking about this 5% scheme. I've got to get in, you've got to buy property now before it takes off. Yeah. So there is that FOMO. And that's a very real thing where the markets are starting to get more expensive. I've been to auctions, recently where they've had price guides of, 1.2, 1.3, which is like in a Sydney market, that's reasonably cheap price guide. However, those properties ended up selling well above the price guide. In some cases up to about 1.7, which is around between 400,000 to 500,000 over the price guide. Right. So therefore it ends up going out of the value of the first home buyers that can get into that at that 1.5 because everything's just been pushed up in value. And there's just so much demand and everything.
Well, there's no more houses, and we're already short on those already, especially in New South Wales.
And that brings me to the next point is that there's just a bigger issue here, and that is the housing accord where the government was going to build 1.2 million houses over 5 years. They're just nowhere near that. So what we're really seeing is a shortage of houses. Obviously, not the infrastructure because there's no more houses being built in the areas essentially where people want to live or need to live. Near the city. Where there's infrastructure, where they need to work. There's not enough infrastructure in the outer suburbs, and not enough houses being built. Is the red tape around council approvals, and we do approvals all the time, particularly for the duplexes that we do. There's just so much red tape around getting stuff through. Councils need to ease up on that, or governments need to ease up on the requirements for councils,
across.
things like that. But it's it's crazy. I mean, just to use a couple of examples. I mean, we've got a place like Brisbane, where even at the moment there's about 300 people a week moving into Brisbane from the southern states. And in the last financial year, there were 40,000 people that left Sydney to move into Queensland. Right. So people are moving away from Sydney to try to get into a less expensive area to buy, but those prices are just going up and up and up. As well. So while that's good if you're an investor at the moment, you're trying to get in and then you might capitalise on some growth, it's really pushing up the value of those properties, which is going to be a struggle for first home buyers to get there. And Brisbane's interesting. I'm using that as an example here, but when you look at the people are so excited about Brisbane and the Olympics and how the Olympics are going to affect the market, and like we've done a whole research report on that. However, there's a lot more to it than just the Olympics and the infrastructure that's going in. It really comes down to the supply and the demand. The supply of houses is low. The government's nowhere near meeting their targets there, and of course the population growth is there. So you've got population growth, low supply. So that's putting upwards pressure on prices for housing and also on rental prices. So that's just pushing everything up anyway, and that's where the real thing that's happening there. So this 5% scheme is just going to contribute to that problem. So the government and Albo is not solving any problems here.
Well, it's never been used like this before. Normally they bring in this it's been done before in the past when the market's been flat and they want to encourage new investments. I remember back in the time they said it was only for new properties. So that would help the properties get sold and the builder build more, and it helps with supply. But I feel like this time it's basically we're all in a room bidding for the one property, and you're just giving all of us more money to spend, but we're still buying the same property.
Well, that's exactly right. And I work with lots of different buyers at different price points. But just recently, I've been working with a couple of first home buyers around that price point that they had budgets of sort of around 1.3, 1.4.
Right.
Managed to extend it a little bit, but we'll go into auctions that had a price guide of 1.2. So I know what happens at auctions and how you need to sort of allow 10-15% above the guide to see what's going to be realistically selling. But when you got a guide of 1.2 and the property selling at 1.7.
That's a big discrepancy.
There's a big discrepancy, and there's arguments out there that the properties have been underquoted and real estate agents are underquoting, but that's not really the issue, because the issue is just the demand for the property, and you only need a couple of people who really want the property that have got deeper pockets, and they just keep outbidding each other. And real estate agents aren't really going to know what's going to happen.
We've got to give you a market estimate before we sell the property, but we're using old data, the properties that have sold, and said A sold for this, B sold for this is what yours should reach, and we're in a moving market at the moment, so that data might be 6 or 8 weeks old. Then you put it to market's moved again, then it goes to auction day 6 weeks later.
And that's the point, isn't it? Because
and then it's way off, and you've gone in there as a buyer's agent and said, okay, these are my comparables. And it's still out by 500,000.
Well, I guess for us, I guess from a selling agent's point of view, you'll market a property. You might use data from 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right. Auction day is different to when we first.
And you'll let the your clients know what the comparables are. And then you've got a 4-week auction campaign.
Correct.
So from the minute they sign your agency agreement to auction day, it might be 10, 12 weeks thereabouts. The market has moved a lot in that time.
Right.
From my perspective, and that's where just being on the ground and doing this sort of thing every weekend with myself and the team, we can see what's happening at the auction, so we can prepare clients for this and try to be quite transparent around where things are going in terms of, okay, this is the guide, but based on what's been selling recently, it's it's probably going to sell for this. But even we've been surprised at what's been happening, because what's happened one week, things get even more carried away the next week. So the data from 6 weeks ago or 3 months ago is completely irrelevant in a moving market, because it really is week to week, and you really need to keep your finger on the pulse there.
Yeah.
But all these these schemes and stuff,
it's not helping.
It's not helping. It's just contributing to that. We need more houses to be built. We need more supply. We don't need
more competition. We don't need more competition.
I just use an example, because there's been a lot of talk over the years with the supply problems of apartments in Melbourne and also in a Brisbane, particularly dating back sort of 10, 15 years ago when the councils there released way too many developments, and then there's just this glut of developments going up.
Yeah.
That put downward pressure on prices. The apartments in Brisbane are only just recovering now, and they're starting to get some good growth. The apartments, like the standard sort of 1-2 bedroom kind of apartments in areas like South Yarra and stuff like that in Melbourne they haven't really recovered. They're still quite cheap because of that glut there. But the reason that glut's there is because there was so much supply, and that's why we never advise to buy in that kind of area or that kind of product, because there's no uniqueness about it, and there's way too much supply. However, if you're a homeowner and you're looking to buy your first home, that's perfect if you still go and buy yourself an apartment for like 300,000 and that sort of thing. We need to see a little bit of that happening with maybe some of the houses, around the markets where they can sort of build some more houses, open up some more estates, which again aren't the right move necessarily for investors and the sort of strategies we talk about in possibly geared, but certainly for homeowners, home buyers can get into some of these markets where there's a lot of supply, like if there can be a lot of supply, and then they will have a better chance of getting properties within their budget essentially.
We bring an interesting point. So yes, we know the unit market in Melbourne and Sydney from 16 to 2024 pretty much did nothing. And if we have a similar occurrence now and you've done your 5% deposit, that could be a real issue for someone 5 or 10 years down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can be an issue where there will be potentially like negative equity as well, and that's why it's really important that when you're buying a home, I think you also do need to look at the value proposition of that property moving forward, because although it's a home to live in, you want to, like most people, particularly if you're buying an apartment, most people do see that as a stepping stone.
Yes.
I certainly did that with my first property. I had a little 1-bedroom apartment, then moved up to a villa, and then sort of bought a house after that. Most people sort of follow that sort of trajectory, or that's their plan.
Yeah.
But if you buy an apartment that doesn't get any growth, then you're not going to be able to leverage off that or sell that to be able to upgrade later on. Yeah. So you do need to look at the potential growth that you're going to get from your property as well. So that is a bit of an issue with...
So that's a negative side of this 5%. We've got to be very cautious with it and how you spend it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so is there any sort of advice around that as well when you're looking at the properties? Are you advising your customers to take this 5%?
Well, I don't advise them to take the 5%. Essentially, people come to me with the idea to buy with that 5% scheme. Most of our clients, like we do work with quite a few home buyers, but the majority of our clients, probably 90% of our clients, are investors. But some of those investors at the moment are actually coming to us with the 5% scheme because they feel that it's cheaper to get into the property with only 5%, and they think that's a good scheme, and they've got savings in various ways with the scheme.
Right.
Obviously, you have to live in the property. Now, here's the slight problem, is that if they, say, live in Sydney and they're on a certain budget, they might have a budget of under $1 million, for example.
Yeah.
Doesn't get you a lot in Sydney. But they want to use the 5% deposit. Now, they might have enough 5% deposit. They might have enough to actually buy 10% deposit somewhere else on a cheaper property.
Right.
But
yes. Okay.
if they want to use that 5% scheme, then they might need to buy in Sydney, or they want to buy in Sydney, so they might need to buy a sort of a cheaper, like an apartment, like maybe a 1-bedroom apartment to start with or something.
Yeah.
But the comparison is, would they be better off doing that, or would they be better off just getting a good solid investment property in a different location that will perform well? So we could look at regional locations. We could look at areas outside Melbourne, like Geelong. We could look at various areas in Queensland, even outer suburbs in Brisbane, and buy something cheaper that's going to get better growth. But they wouldn't be able to live in it. So the question is, I always look at the data and then weigh up whether the 5% deposit is going to be better than the long-term growth of the property, because while they might save a few $1,000s with the 5% deposit, they that pales into insignificance if they buy a solid investment property that's going to get them hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity in the future. Whereas if they buy the wrong property just because they need to live in it, and it's an apartment, it doesn't get much growth, and it ends up with lots of issues with strata and body corporate and all that kind of stuff. They may not get much growth. So we need to really look at what's going to be best for them. Some people also, if they work from home, they might live in Sydney, and they say, well, if I can move away from Sydney, maybe close to Sydney but away, that can be an option. So people might move from to Newcastle or to the Hunter Valley or something like that, and buy a property and start their investment portfolio that way, but live in the property for 6 months, and then turn it into investment and then buy another property. But again, we then need to look at, well, is that area right for their strategy? Is that going to get them the best growth as well? Right. So it really does come down to what's going to be best for you.
Because this 5% deposit might lead them to a property that's actually not the right property. That's what you're essentially trying to say.
Yeah.
They're going to go, oh, well, I've got 5% of the million, but maybe I'm better off buying something a little bit cheaper at 10%, right, with that may give me better capital growth. So it's sort of, it could, probably for a better word, lead him in the wrong direction to the wrong property.
Potentially, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So that's always a conversation I have with them. So I'm never going to force someone to buy, something they don't want to buy, like outside of Sydney or something like that. But it's always a conversation, and often people will turn around and say, actually, I'd be better off rentvesting, where I could just live where I want to live, close to work, but buy an investment property somewhere else. And forego the 5% deposit. When we look, but you need to look at the data basically around. Okay, this is how much growth apartments in this area have made in the last 10 years. But if we look at what's happening in the, for example, the Brisbane market, this is how much growth you can potentially make on a house there.
Yeah.
So it's really about looking at that data, making sure people are comfortable.
So your advice is forget about the 5% deposit scheme. Look at what you're actually buying and what the long-term growth will be. Don't just say I've got into the market.
Absolutely. That particularly if you're really looking for investment. If you are looking for your own home, then that's a little bit different, because if you just really want a home and the purpose of this 5% scheme is to get your own home,
right, then
that might be slightly different. But you do need to understand what you're doing, because it's the same thing. Like if you're going to buy an apartment and it's not going to get a lot of growth, is that the right first
right investment
for you?
Yeah.
But that's how I got into the market. But we didn't have any 5% schemes back then or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth weighing up. But like I think the key to that is that Albo is not fixing the problem.
No, I think he's adding to the problem. What we've seen out in the marketplace is more people coming forward, higher prices. I saw a unit sell in the same building, I think it was 6 weeks apart, and it was almost $200,000 in price. And it's the same unit, 2-bedroom unit, in the same suburb, same block. So it's already pushing the market up that people are now bidding for it. And investors probably out there have to be a bit wary of that as well, saying,
but that's
make sure they're not overpaying for whatever they're looking for, because now they're competing against these people with 5% deposits.
And that's in a unit, because I've had people come to me that bought units in 2015, and they came to me 8 years later and said, well, I bought this property in 2015 and it's worth less than I paid for it. Yeah. First I say, did you buy that off the plan? And the answer is always yes.
Yes, I think you got to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
And just to wrap it up, so 5% deposit, is it a good idea or not?
It really depends. So, look, I think it has its merits. Definitely, but it's not fixing the problem. It's adding to the problem, and people need to be aware of that. So I think people need to get advice. So whether they're talking to a financial advisor, their mortgage broker, their accountant, probably the whole team, the whole dream team that we talk about.
Yes.
Have the buyer's agent, property advisor, all advising them around that. Don't just jump in and say it has to. We have to buy this, with a first home, 5% scheme, because. People also need to understand that they might still miss out because the prices are running away.
Yeah, prices are running away.
And one of the things that we can look at, if they can't afford, what the prices are doing, is that, well, hey, forget about it. Let's go buy an investment property in a market that isn't so hot. Get into a market that is in a growing market, because it hasn't run away yet. Look at sort of something that's 7 or 8 o'clock in the clock and buy something there, rather than just getting into a booming market because we have to use this 5%. So it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah. So that would be advice. I was going to have a final question for you to say, what would you give you advice for first home buyers? Because that's what we're sort of talking about today, would be do your homework.
Do your homework, seek advice and get educated. So with any kind of property purchase, whether it's for a home or for your investment, just get educated.
Yeah. All right. Lloyd, brings us to that time of the show. Ed's deal.
Love it.
We've got 3 properties to put up again. You're going to tell us if they're a good deal or bad deal. We might get the first one up on the screen. Let me get my sheet out so I can run them through with you.
Interesting looking property.
Yeah. Okay. This one is in Denham Court. Number 3, Cookwood Street, Denham Court. They've got a guide price of 1.3 to 1.350. Rental yield 850,000. It's on a bit of a smaller block. Good suburb.
The reason that this property looked interesting because I thought it was one of mine for a minute. It looks very similar to one of mine, but
Right.
the one I'm referring to is actually in Brisbane.
Right.
But look, I guess one thing that we need to talk about with some of these is that it does come down to strategy because when you say, is this a good deal or a bad deal, it really depends what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah.
So would I buy that for 1.3 mil as an investment that's only bringing in $800? That would be questionable.
Right.
But definitely something to look at. Look, as a home, it's obviously it's fairly
It's a nice
new.
home. Yeah, it's fairly new.
So I think as an investment, we have some depreciation on it, which, like we've talked about before, isn't the be all and end all or anything, but it can help a bit. But the area is good. I've owned property out there personally. We've bought property for people out there as well, and they've done well. So it's a good growth area. So I'm going to actually say this is a yes. It is a deal.
Right.
Based on what your strategy is and based on further due diligence on the property.
It is a 5% scheme too.
There's a 5% scheme. So
But I
this
would be
this
cautious
could
on
be
that.
this could be like it's a little bit questionable because the yield will be a little bit low
Yeah.
if you're going to rent it. If you're going to lease it out as a rental property. But for a first home buyer scheme, it is in an affordable part of the market.
Yeah.
And it's not for auction, right? It's got a list price on
List
it.
price, yeah, somewhere between that. I think it's a little high at 1.13. I think it needs to come down a little bit.
So so I think that does fit the 5% scheme. So it could be definitely worth looking at for someone.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's put the next one up. All right, this one's in one of your old backyards. Right, so this is 3/130 Wardell Road, Marrickville. It is a townhouse. It is going up for auction. They've got a guide price of 1.3. Rental yield for a 2-bedroom townhouse in that area is probably going to be around 850,000 in a west suburb, Sydney based, if anyone doesn't know where that is. So this is the courtyard, obviously. There's a front shop. What are your sort of thoughts on
Okay, so
Marrickville?
where about how many townhouses are in this block?
I think there's 5.
And where's this one situated exactly?
Well, being number 3, I think it's going to be a mill. I don't know exactly. I haven't been out to look. I've looked
Have you
at
got
it
a floor
online.
plan there?
I think I might have a floor plan for you. You think of the moving, Lloyd?
No, but there's when you're buying in a townhouse or a villa complex, buying something that's not right on the street, buying something that's probably in the quieter part of the building.
Yeah.
Wardell
Road's busy.
everyone.
Yeah. It is on Wardell Road, so it does have a little bit of traffic. It's not crazy, but it looks like it's the back of the building.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Marrickville is probably one of the best inner west suburbs. It's really gentrified over the years. It's getting really solid growth.
Yeah.
So very happy to buy there. In fact, we just bought a home for someone there recently. Like when I say recently, like last week.
Yeah.
'Cause we've bought quite a few properties there, but most recently bought a house there. The questionable part about this, so there's a good number of units. There's not too many units in the complex. Water Road is a little bit busy, so there's a little bit of traffic there. So that would be my questionable part about it. But that property would potentially be an okay investment in that market. It's not cheap, not on the cheaper side.
No.
Certainly when I'd do a comparison, if I was going to buy as an investment, I'd do a comparison between that and whether the sort of standalone house I could get for the same price in a Bayside area, maybe Brisbane or something.
Right.
To look at the growth and stuff like that. So from that perspective, and because of the busy road, I'm probably leaning more towards that being a home to live in. So for me, depending on what you're looking to do with it, I'd consider that as a deal as well.
Okay. All right. So we've got 2.
I don't think we've ever had 2 deals.
We've never had 2 deals in this game. Never.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. Can we please have the next one up? Okay. Now, if you don't recognise that, this is Vaucluse.
Yep.
Right. So it's a 1-bedroom in Vaucluse with parking. They've got a guide price of 1.3 on it. Right. Still first home buyer scheme in Vaucluse. Rental yield is $1,050,000. That's the actual view.
Well, have you been there?
Oh no, it's in the brochure.
Yeah, but
I've been to Vaucluse.
No,
You can have a look at that one there. You can have a look at the floor plan.
Is that the house?
Oh,
there,
that's
there?
the agent's being special and go, it's close by.
Yeah.
You can have a look at the floor
How do you know
plan on
that's
that.
the view? You haven't been
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's
and
the
what's
view
this?
from
What's
top.
this? What's this rooftop thing here?
That's your neighbour, in case you don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, it's a good
It's
suburb.
intriguing, isn't it?
It's intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would put that as I put that as a possibility because if you wanted to live in that sort of area, properties in the area, can go anywhere up to
Anything.
30
million.
30,
Yeah.
40 million, even
Yeah.
100 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely, it has a very intriguing rental yield. I mean, the rental
does.
yield on that is a lot more attractive than the Denham Court one.
Yes, and Marrickville. It's got more than Marrickville too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. But thinking about Denham Court, because if I was going to choose an investment property between Denham Court or Vaucluse, I would choose this as the investment property, and then I'd live in Denham Court.
Yeah.
Some people might say they want to live right here because it's a nice
But it's
location.
only one bedroom. So if you've got a family, it's a bit harder.
That's right. Yeah. Look, that's potentially a deal as well. That's potentially.
I found it. I thought, oh, that's something interesting.
I don't really know. I mean, that's the view, but is that taken on a camera they've really zeroed in? Is it a long way away from the?
We'll have to go and look at it, Lloyd. We'll have to go and look at it.
So yeah, potentially, but like with any property that you look at, I always recommend people
Do your homework.
Do your homework and get a real understanding about it, because what you see in pictures is not necessarily what is the real case when you get there.
No. But are we saying we got possibly 3 deals today?
Yeah, 2.5.
I'm
Two and a quarter.
I'm going to come
Not
work
sure,
for you,
something
Lloyd.
like
I
that.
found those 3 properties, and okay. I liked it. I thought it's just different.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But
Gives you a different
does
feel
the
than
sailing boat
Spain.
come with it or what?
The sailing boat, it's a rental.
What is that? Is that a chicken? What's that yellow thing there?
I think that's a marker.
Oh,
on the
okay.
headlamp.
Sorry.
Or is it a barbecue?
I don't know.
All right, so we got 3 possible deals today.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Thanks, Lloyd. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot, Talk soon.